Spacewolf! G'day, Stu from UAVfutures, and today, well, we're doing ridiculous intros, but what we're checking out, something I'm pretty excited about. This is the bench breakdown, the part 1. If you want to see part 2, go watch this card up here. But what this is the Spacewolf, you know, from Furibee. It's a tiny little 3-inch racer that, honestly, I can't believe it. It looks like it's actually got some pretty cool tech in here. And when I say can't believe it, I mean Furibee in the past, they've been hit and miss. They've been great and they've been garbage. So this one, I'm kind of hopeful, because the last one, the Stormer, look, wasn't too bad. So I'm sort of hoping they're going to win some stuff back. But the reason I'm excited, I mean, it's got some pretty cool motors in here, things like smart audio, some pretty cool tech, and I think it is going to rip absolutely in the part 2 video. So what we should do, let's stick it on the bench, waste no time, and find out what makes this quad special. And then in the part 2 video, we'll take it out to the field, rip it around, and show you guys some impressions with Grumpy Treb, Crash Test Cal, all that sort of jazz. So let's stick it on the bench, waste no time, and find out what's so special about the techs and the specs. All right, let's do it. Alrighty, here it is on the bench, and look, first things first, I really like the look of it, flashing some pictures on the screen. I really like the prop sort of, it's funny how much just some standoffs, heat shrink, and some props can make sort of the character of a quad, and I do think this one looks pretty cool. Now, what I want to mention too is, we've got some zip ties here. It does come like this, but they kind of made me laugh, so I've left them on there. We are going to be addressing that in a little bit, but essentially, what this is a 3-inch little micro-sized FPV racer that is hopefully going to absolutely scream on a 4S pack. And 3-inch I think is really popular nowadays, because look, they're getting up there with some absolutely insane speeds, some of them almost close to 100 miles per hour. So you don't need the big 5 inches anymore to have a ridiculously fast flight experience. This thing should have plenty of power, and I think what this is going after is a really budget sort of entry level. So for the price, what we want to know is, how good is the craft, and is this sort of going to be a good value 3-inch racer that we can jump in and rip around? And 3 inches are great as well if you're in like some smaller places. You know, they're less intimidating, less noisy than some of the 5 inches out there as well. Anyway, what we should do, let's stick it on the scales. So let's tear these scales off. Take your guesses. How much is it going to weigh? I'm going to guess 160. Okay, it's coming in at 143 grams. So look, not too shabby whatsoever, and I think with some careful management, you could keep this under the 250 gram limit depending on what battery you put on there. Look, that might not be a big deal for a lot of people, but I know some people really care about that FAA registration and under the 250 gram limit, all that sort of stuff. Now what we should do, let's break it down quickly, look at the components, then we'll talk about the design, the quality, and the pros and the cons. Now speaking of those components, let's get this bit out of the way. You actually get this little cap that you can put in here, and I'm kind of curious, you know, why is this not already soldered in? When you get something that comes out of the box, and I should mention the box that this comes in is a cardboard box. You don't get any instructions, one piece of foam. It is pretty bare bones. You know, they're really going after something value-wise, but if you've got this cap, either you're going to need it or you're not. They should know that in the factory, so that should come installed or not, and we're going to find out how clean is the video in this thing. Anyway, so let's move in, and I guess the first thing we can talk about, you can buy this frame separately. I'll link this down below as well, but it's a 3-inch frame. It's got 4mm arms, and essentially, you know, each one is an individual. It's a, gosh, that's a very, very stiff frame right there. So look, the frame I think is going to hold up fantastic. You can see it's just got 4 standoffs, pretty light sort of stuff, but then we get actually some pretty magical components. So what we've got here on the outside, we've just got our little, I think they're 30, 40 props. They're not actually labeled or anything like that, but they're little tri-blade ones. Most people I know just switch their props out anyway. You don't get any spares, anything like that. Underneath that, we actually have something pretty cool. So this is a Furibee branded motor, and it's a 1506, so a very, very strange size. I'll flash some pictures on the screen, and essentially that's at 3,400 kV. So this thing should absolutely scream through the air on a proper 4S battery, and I'm going to take a bet if you wanted to put some more aggressive props on here, the size of this motor, that would allow you to do that. Now I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can talk about some of the internals, because look, there's not really too much to this quad, so bear with me while I zoom in. Alrighty, so now I've zoomed in, you can see this is where we've sort of got our little stack, and there's quite a lot of room in here. I reckon if you were trying to put a Runcam Mini or something like that, Runcam Micro, you could actually fit one in here with a little bit of practice. But essentially on the bottom, what we've got, this is where we've got our 4-in-1 ESC, 28 amp, you know, BOHEL ES, all that sort of good stuff. On top of that, this is where we've got our Omnibus F4 flight controller with Betaflight, OSD built in, so that's great. Pretty standard stuff nowadays. That's what we're expecting in most of our drones. And then on the top, this is where things start to get a little bit strange. So we've got a VTX, which has different power levels, you know, all that sort of stuff, but it also has some smart audio. So it uses the TBS smart audio on top of there. So I'm not too sure how that's going to go. What essentially it's going to allow us to do is to change our, I guess, our channels and bands, all that sort of stuff from the radio. So you don't need to push dip switches and muck around with the dials or anything like that. But on the other hand, if you do want to do it the old-fashioned way, you do have this little sort of, I'll flash a picture on the screen as well. You do have this little display that you can use. Now, one thing, speaking of this, you really need to, we're going to be talking about this in the quality as well, but look, this is my antenna. This is meant to come on, like, you know, it's meant to come attached to the craft. Mine was loose in the box. So if you're going to get one of these, definitely check that it is secured down. Now, speaking of the other end, it's just a little dipole. The other end of the FPV side of things, we've just got a little sort of, this is just a little clone camera. It's called the MS, but I'm pretty sure that's going to stand for micro swift. Nothing too special there. Very, very generic. And of course, I've got the FreeSky receiver built in mine. So I've got the Bind and Fly for FreeSky. There's a couple of different versions. I'll try and link them down below anyway. And we've got our two antennas running up the top. Now, what I want to do, I want to quickly talk about design, and then we really need to have a word about the quality. So the design of this thing, I don't really know how much you can say. I mean, the frame is very stiff. I like what they've done with the frame, but this is pretty generic stuff nowadays. You know, 2 plates of carbon, a sandwich plate in the middle holding 4 arms. That's like 90% of the frames out there. So there's nothing too innovating. You don't really have too much camera protection. The one part I think was a good design choice. I like the motors they've gone for. I think those things, hopefully they're going to hold up very well. I'm very excited for that. And I guess, yeah, the rest of it is just pretty standard stuff. It's nice to, you know, design around having smart audio, all that sort of jazz, but essentially it's a pretty generic looking quadcopter. It's not doing anything too innovating. Now moving on, we can talk about the quality, and this is where for Furibee, I'm sorry, I really have to wait for the part 2 to get the full rundown. You know, it looks what I want to say is it looks great. The solder joints look fantastic. You know, the smart audio, that's a great feature to have, a quality of life feature. The frame, I can say, feels very, very stiff. But Furibee in the past has been really hit and miss when it comes to quality. Now, some little things you're going to need to do, like my antenna shouldn't be popping off like that. You know, if that came off in flight, if that's how loose it was, that it's going to ruin your day. It could burn out your internals in there. You could burn out your VTX. And speaking of that, look at this little bit on the outside right here. We've got our zip ties, and I kind of thought, gee, has Furibee actually listened to what people have been saying? Have they zip tied down their wires on the arms so they're not going to come up here and get caught in the props? Nope. That's how it came in the box, because this was zip tied down to the bottom of the box with a piece of foam. So that's all it was. It was just for securing it inside its little shipping container, which is a shame. Furibee, if you're listening, please zip tie all these down and then cut them shorter. So of course we're going to need to do that, but we're going to need to cut these before we take it out and fly it around. Oh, I should have mentioned too, you do have a buzzer, but it is totally loose. So that's flapping around in the air right there. So that's going to need to be secured down as well. And then on the bottom, I really like this part. I thought this would have been a great place to run your antennas out on this frame, but they've just sort of slapped theirs on the top, and look, it's okay, but I think you should have used these 2 little things down there. I think that's a much better solution. So essentially, the quality, I'm only going to give it a 6 out of 10. If that holds up in the long run, I'm going to be very, very impressed. But overall, I guess I've just had too much history and too much experience with Furibee in the products. We really need to wait for that part 2 video. Now let's talk about the pros and the cons. So the big con for me, and look, it's probably just its quality control. How is it going to be? If you're going to get one of these, don't expect to take it out of the box, rip it around first time. You're going to need to do a few small mods, you know, like, so put some hot glue over your antenna, zip tie these things down. You know, it didn't come with a little Velcro strap, which I should have mentioned before. It doesn't have a Velcro strap, which is really, really, I guess, how much is that going to cost them? Like 20 cents or something like that to include in one of these kits. So look, overall, that's my biggest concern, is the quality. On the plus side, I love the price. I hope the flight performance, I've seen some videos, the flight performance does look off the chain. I want to test my model, but I think the flight performance is going to be pretty good, and like a great value quadcopter for people just to be able to get up, rip around, and have some fun in a little micro size. And of course, things like the smart audio, you know, and some of the decent components in here. And if the camera holds up, well, I definitely think we might be onto a little winner. I know Cal too is super excited for this, because 3 inch is like his favorite class. That's what he's been flying most of summer. He is really, really loving the XJB, so it's going to be great to see what he thinks versus this one. Alrighty, so there it is. There's my review of the Furibee Spacewolf dt140, whatever its name is. I'll try and link it down below anyway, but essentially, I'm actually kind of hopeful for how this thing is going to go in the field. I like the motors. I think they should absolutely rip with, you know, that sort of KV and that size. It should just scream through there. It should have plenty of punch. And if you couple this thing with like an 800, 900 milliamp hour battery, I think you're going to have a lot of fun and be very impressed. I can't wait to see how fast is it going to go in the part 2 review. But that's how these part 1s go. We look at the text and the specs, and that's why part 2 is so important. So we can't really call it until we take it out and test it. So that video should be live now. Go and watch that. Drop your comments down below or what do you think about this 3-inch bad boy. Subscribe for more FPV related content. And as always, happy flying. Alrighty, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. Definitely subscribe if you're new to the channel and check out these videos. And I'm also going to leave a little link here to my Patreon page because I've got some fantastic Patreon supporters and I like to give back to them as well. So if you want to join the UAVfutures family, there's things like bonus Velcro straps, little bundles of FPV goodies and things like that that also get sent out. Anyway, happy flying.